Shabbat Shalom, it's Rabbi Shields, Associate Rabbi here at Temple Sinai for another episode of the Haftarah Drop. Just a weekly look at the Haftarah and the prophet from whence it came. So this week's Haftarah is from the book of Ezekiel. And sometimes our prophets speak with great poetry and universal visions of peace. But Ezekiel does something different. Ezekiel in this week's Haftarah is almost surgical, focused, I would call it. The Haftarah talks about priests, and it talks about who comes close and how one stands in that sacred space. And right away in the Haftarah, there's a distinction that's made. Only the descendants of Zadok, those who remain faithful when others went astray, are invited, and it says, to come near to me, to minister to me. So not everybody that shows up gets to, or perhaps is ready to come close. But those, right, those who remain faithful, perhaps those who remain grounded in the purpose, they are invited in. So it's this idea, I think, that closeness is not something automatic. It's often cultivated. So Ezekiel, who is he talking to? Ezekiel is talking to a people who are in exile, who are dreaming of being restored, of restoration. And Ezekiel's message is clear. If we're going to rebuild something that is sacred, we can't just rebuild the structure, the temple, right? We have to rebuild the moral inner core, the integrity. And to think of the priests in this setting as not just ritual functionaries. They're guardians of meaning and rebuilders of meaning. It says in the Haftarah, they shall teach my people the difference between holy and profane, and make known to them the difference between unclean and clean. There's an element of discernment that the priests are hoping to build or inculcate in the people. The people need to discern, and the people need some help in noticing. This idea of distinguishing, lehavdil, to tell the difference, is so important in Judaism. We see it on Havdalah, right? Havdalah literally meaning to differentiate, to distinguish. And I think it's important in life, too, that oftentimes the world tries to blur everything together. And what Ezekiel is doing is something that's really important to us. That Ezekiel is trying and insisting, really, that spiritual life needs clarity. We need to be able to discern what matters and what doesn't. What kind of lifts us up and what pulls us away from that which is important or holy. And Ezekiel also speaks to that it's not just about the priests. And this should speak to us today. It's about all of us. That we each have a responsibility to shape the atmosphere, especially the spiritual atmosphere that's around us. There's also a humility here. The priests, yes, are given honor, but they're also given boundaries, right? They're told they have a specific thing to wear. They're supposed to act in certain ways. They are told who they can marry. How they mourn, even, is different than others. Why? Why? Because that proximity they have to holiness is not about the privilege of being a priest, of having that station. It's about responsibility. And so as we move closer to holiness, hopefully that's a lifelong endeavor, our lives will become more intentional to match, right? The closer we stand to holiness, the more intentional our lives become and must become. There's this beautiful line in the Haftarah that says, I am their portion and their inheritance. God says, you don't need land, you don't need wealth, you don't need status. I am enough. And I think that speaks to us too, that the greatest inheritance that we can have is not money. And money is not unimportant, but it's a life that has purpose. So what do we do with all of this? And that's what I always ask every week, or most of the weeks I ask, what do we do with all of this as people living in 2026? Most of us, none of us really, are priests in an ancient temple, but all of us stand on the edge of special, holy, sacred moments every single day. That sacred moment where we choose kindness over indifference, when we decide to show up with integrity, when we help someone else see the difference between what really matters, what's eternal, you could call it, and what is fleeting. I think in those moments, when we have that sense of the sacred and discernment, sacred discernment, then we're doing exactly what Ezekiel envisioned in this Haftarah. Holiness is not about access, it's about alignment, and there are little moments of alignment, opportunities for alignment happen every day. There's opportunities to align in small ways every day with our values, alignment with our purpose, alignment with and recognition that each one of us holds a sacred spark, and also to recognize the spark in others. So this Shabbat, as we read more and hear Ezekiel's vision, hopefully we can ask ourselves, what am I being called? Where am I being called to step a little bit closer? And what would it look like to live a life worthy of that closeness? Shabbat Shalom.